when an HOA security guard slapped my wife. Everyone expected me to explode. Instead, I stayed calm, and that decision ended his entire fake career. At first, no one in the neighborhood took him seriously. He showed up out of nowhere wearing a cheap-looking uniform, a badge clipped crookedly to his chest, and a walkie-talkie that never seemed to work. He claimed the HOA had appointed him as a security officer because of rising complaints. But none of us had ever seen a vote, a notice, or even an email about it. Still, he walked around like he owned the place, stopping people for parking slightly over the line, questioning guests, and barking orders at elderly residents as if they were criminals. Most people stayed quiet. HOA problems were already stressful enough, and nobody wanted extra trouble. Within days, his behavior escalated. He started knocking on doors late in the evening, demanding ID, asking invasive questions about who lived in each house and who was visiting. He threatened fines, towing, and police involvement if anyone talked back. Parents felt uncomfortable letting their kids play outside when he was on patrol because he stared too long and spoke too aggressively. Even delivery drivers began avoiding our street after being harassed by him. Every time someone asked for proof of his authority, he'd tap his badge and say, "You don't want to make this difficult." The HOA board stayed suspiciously silent. Emails went unanswered. Calls were ignored. It slowly became clear that this guy was either abusing his position or flat out lying about it. Rumors spread that he wasn't T certified, wasn't T trained, and definitely wasn't T law enforcement. Yet he leaned into the role harder each day, setting up cones, blocking driveways, and issuing fake-looking warning slips that had no official letterhead. He thrived on intimidation. You could tell he enjoyed the fear. What made it worse was how selective he was. He targeted women, elderly homeowners, and renters who didn't know HOA rules well. He avoided confident men and anyone who looked like they might push back. He spoke loudly, aggressively, and always in public, making scenes to embarrass people into compliance. The neighborhood mood changed fast. What used to feel calm and safe now felt tense, like we were being watched by someone just waiting for an excuse to assert power. None of us imagined how far he would go. At that point, we thought he was just another HOA bully playing dress-up. We didn't know that his hunger for control was about to cross a line that would change everything. The moment it happened, everything seemed to slow down. My wife was walking back from the mailbox in broad daylight, holding a stack of letters and a small package, when he suddenly stepped in front of her like he was blocking a suspect. Neighbors were outside. Cars were passing. There was no chaos, no emergency, just his ego on display. He started accusing her of violating HOA security rules, saying she wasn't allowed to receive packages without prior approval. The accusation made no sense, and she calmly told him he had no right to stop her. That's when his voice changed. He leaned in close, speaking low and sharp, trying to intimidate her. When she asked him to step back and stop harassing her, he raised his voice so everyone could hear, claiming she was being uncooperative. She tried to walk around him, clearly shaken but still composed. He grabbed her arm to stop her. Several neighbors gasped. Someone shouted at him to let her go. Instead of backing off, he snapped. In a split second, he slapped her across the face. The sound was sharp and unmistakable. Letters fell to the ground. My wife stumbled back, stunned, her hand frozen mid-air as she tried to process what just happened. The street went silent. You could see shock on every face around us. This wasn't an argument anymore. This wasn't HOA nonsense. This was an assault, committed openly, without shame, by a man who believed his fake authority protected him. He didn't look afraid afterward. That's what made it worse. He puffed out his chest, adjusted his badge, and shouted that she was resisting security enforcement. He threatened to call the police, as if he hadn't just committed a crime himself. My wife was trembling not just from pain, but from humiliation. Being struck in public by someone pretending to be law enforcement cuts deeper than physical pain. It strips dignity away. Neighbors started recording on their phones. Some rushed to my wife's side, asking if she was okay. Others confronted him, demanding his name and badge number. He backed away slightly but kept talking, spinning the story in his favor, insisting he was doing his job. In that moment, it became painfully clear that he truly believed he was untouchable. He thought fear and a fake badge were enough to control an entire neighborhood. What he didn't know what none of them knew yet was that he had just made the worst mistake of his life. I arrived just as the crowd was forming. Phones raised, voices overlapping, confusion thick in the air. My wife's face told me everything before she even spoke. Her hand was shaking, her eyes glassy, and there was a red mark blooming on her cheek that made my blood run cold. I didn't rush him. I didn't shout. Years of training had taught me that emotion is exactly what people like him feed on. I stepped beside my wife, put myself between her and him, and listened. He started talking immediately, pointing at her, then at me, rattling off a rehearsed version of events. According to him, she had been non-compliant, aggressive, and interfering with HOA security operations. He used words he clearly didn't fully understand, the kind he picked up from movies and police dramas. Every sentence was designed to sound official. Every gesture screamed insecurity. I watched his hands. They were shaking slightly. Not fear, adrenaline. I asked him one simple question. Under whose authority he was operating? He froze for half a second, then named the HOA, claiming he was fully empowered to enforce rules. I asked for documentation. He deflected. I asked for his certification. He laughed. That laugh told me everything. Real professionals don't laugh when their authority is questioned. They present facts. He had none. Still, I kept my voice calm. I apologized to my wife loudly enough for everyone to hear, not because she needed it, but because it grounded her and shifted the energy. Then I quietly told her to start recording everything. I knew this wasn't going to be resolved in the street. People like him collapse when the spotlight turns permanent. That's when he made his next mistake. He squared up to me, invading my space, trying to establish dominance. He said, "You don't want to get involved in this." I looked him dead in the eyes and replied, "You already involved me." No threats, no posturing, just certainty. What he couldn't read was restraint. He mistook calm for weakness, silence for surrender. He didn't know that my entire career had been built around de-escalation, observation, and patience under pressure. While he was busy playing a role, I was assessing exits, witnesses, and evidence. I noticed the lack of body cam, the fake radio chatter, the way he avoided giving a last name. In that moment, I decided something important. I wasn't going to touch him. I wasn't going to give him what he wanted, a physical reaction he could twist into a narrative. I was going to let him hang himself with his own lies. And he had no idea that he was already doing exactly that. Once I stepped away from the immediate chaos, my focus shifted completely. This was no longer about anger or impulse. It was about control, precision, and timing. I knew from experience that the fastest way to destroy someone abusing fake authority wasn't through force, it was through exposure. While neighbors comforted my wife and checked the footage they had recorded, I started asking quiet questions. Names, times, what exactly he had said to whom, and when. People were eager to talk now. Fear had flipped into outrage. I called local law enforcement not to report a vague disturbance, but to report an assault with witnesses, video evidence, and a suspect impersonating authority. I used the right language, the kind that triggers protocols instead of indifference. While waiting, I contacted the HOA management company directly. Not the board members who had been dodging emails, but the corporate office listed in their filings. When I mentioned liability, assault, and impersonation, their tone changed instantly. Back on the street, the fake cop was unraveling. He kept pacing, arguing with neighbors, demanding they stop recording. Every demand only made him look guiltier. I didn't engage him again. I let silence do the work. Silence makes liars uncomfortable. They talk too much, contradict themselves, and expose cracks. He did all three. On camera. When police arrived, the shift was immediate. His posture collapsed the moment real uniforms stepped out of the car. He tried to greet them like colleagues, flashing his badge with forced confidence. They didn't recognize him. One officer asked for identification and certification. He couldn't provide either. Another officer reviewed the videos being offered from 3 different phones, each angle worse than the last for him. I watched as his story changed in real time. First, he denied touching my wife. Then he claimed it was an accident. Then he said he was authorized to use reasonable force. That phrase sealed it. The officer stopped him mid-sentence and told him to turn around. The click of the handcuffs was quiet, but it echoed in the neighborhood. The HOA representatives arrived shortly after. Panicked and defensive, they tried to distance themselves immediately, claiming he was a temporary contractor, acting independently. That excuse didn't hold. Contracts were demanded. Names were taken. Statements were recorded. What had started as one man's power trip was now a full investigation. I stood beside my wife the entire time. Steady, present, letting the system work the way it was supposed to. The lesson wasn't lost on anyone watching. Authority isn't something you can fake forever. Eventually, reality shows up, and when it does, training, patience, and discipline matter far more than ego ever could. By the end of the day, the entire neighborhood looked different. Not physically, but emotionally. The fear that had hung over everyone for weeks was gone, replaced by a mix of relief, anger, and disbelief at how far things had been allowed to go. The fake HOA cop was taken away in the back of a patrol car, still trying to argue through the window, still insisting it was all a misunderstanding. No one listened. His voice no longer carried weight. It was just noise. The fallout came fast. Real fast. That evening, an emergency HOA notice hit everyone's inbox. For the first time since this mess started, the board was suddenly very responsive. The message was full of damage control, carefully worded apologies, vague explanations, and repeated claims that they had no knowledge of his actions, but the neighbors weren't buying it anymore. Screenshots, videos, and witness statements were already circulating. People compared notes and realized how many complaints had been ignored before it escalated to violence. Within 48 hours, the HOA terminated all ties with him publicly. They released a statement confirming he was never law enforcement, never certified, and never authorized to use force. That alone caused panic among the board members. Lawyers got involved. Insurance representatives started asking uncomfortable questions. The board chair resigned quietly a week later. As for the fake cop, the consequences didn't stop at arrest. Charges were filed: assault, impersonation, and unlawful detention. The videos made sure there was no room to spin the story. His badge was fake. His uniform was ordered online. His entire persona unraveled under scrutiny. The same man who once strutted around issuing threats now sat silent in a courtroom, staring at the floor while the evidence played on a screen. My wife received more than justice, she received support. Neighbors she barely knew checked in on her daily. Some apologized for staying quiet before. Others thanked her for being the moment everything finally stopped. Strength spreads when people see it up close. For me, the outcome wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. Order returned. Safety returned. And most importantly, dignity returned. One man tried to play cop and bully a neighborhood into submission. Instead, he exposed how fragile fake authority really is. He thought he could hide behind a badge. He forgot that real accountability doesn't come from costumes or titles, it comes from truth. If you believe fake authority should never win and real justice matters, hit subscribe. These stories happen more than you think.